So, we all think we know the big moments in the Christian story, right? But what if they aren't actually separate events at all? Today, we're going to connect those dots and reframe 5 key moments into a single, epic narrative, a massive story of cosmic reclamation. Let's dive in.
Look, most of us, religious or not, we know the basic beats of the Christian gospel. The death of Jesus, the resurrection. They're really famous plot points. But the way we usually see them, even inside the faith, is as a series of disconnected events, each with its own little self-contained meaning. And here they are: the cross, the descent into hell, the resurrection, the Ascension, and Pentecost. We often treat these like they're separate pillars of doctrine, each standing on its own. But what if that's not right? What if they're actually just steps on one single continuous path? And that, right there, is the central question for us today. Are we looking at 5 separate stories that we're supposed to understand on their own? Or are they actually 5 connected acts in one massive cosmic war for the very fate of creation itself? The common approach tends to put all these events in their own neat little boxes. The cross, that's about atonement. The resurrection, oh, that's the proof it all worked. Pentecost, that's when the Holy Spirit shows up. But when we see them like that, we can totally miss the sheer scale and, honestly, the coherence of the much, much bigger story. This really shows the 2 ways of looking at it. On the left, you've got this kind of theological checklist. All important items for sure, but they're totally disconnected. But on the right, you see the Paschal arc, a single, dynamic campaign. And notice the arrows. Each event literally drives the story into the next one. This isn't just a list. It's a story of invasion, victory, and the ultimate reclamation of everything. Okay, so let's jump into the first act of this campaign, entering enemy territory. This whole idea frames the crucifixion and the often ignored descent into hell not as these acts of passive suffering, but as a deliberate strategic invasion into a realm held by hostile cosmic powers. Now, the theological lens for this whole way of thinking is a model called Christus Victor, which just means Christ the victor. So instead of seeing the cross as, say, a legal payment for sin, this view sees it as the decisive battle in a cosmic war, a total victory over the spiritual forces of evil that have the world in their grip. And this isn't just some modern interpretation, by the way. The biblical texts themselves are full of this kind of language. This quote from Colossians, it's straight up military. It literally describes God disarming enemy rulers and parading them around in a victory march. The cross here is a battlefield where the war was decisively won. And that victory momentum builds with one of the most mysterious events in the whole story, the descent. After his death, the Creed says Christ descended into hell. Well, in this campaign narrative, this isn't some weird side story. It's the exact moment the victor goes behind enemy lines to announce that the war is already over. So what actually happens down there? Well, according to a passage in 1 Peter, Christ enters death's domain, a place called Sheol. And while he's there, he makes a proclamation, not of salvation, but of doom to these rebellious angelic spirits that have been imprisoned since the time of Noah. And in that process, he seizes the keys, which are the ultimate symbol of authority over death itself. This brings us right to the second major act of the campaign, the turning point. The victory has been announced behind enemy lines. So what's next? Well, now the king has to break out of the enemy's strongest prison and take his rightful throne. This is an absolutely critical distinction. The resurrection isn't just some divine thumbs up confirming that, yup, the cross worked. No, it is an essential part of the victory itself. I mean, think about it. You don't defeat death by staying dead. You defeat it by going right through it and coming out the other side, completely shattering its power from the inside. And this quote just brilliantly captures that new reality. The risen Christ says, "I died, and look, I am alive forever, and I hold the keys, the authority over death and Hades." He is no longer a captive in their realm. He is the Lord of it. It's like he walked into the prison, took the warden's keys right off his belt, and walked out the front door. So where does the Ascension fit in? When Jesus leaves the earth, we often see it as kind of a sad moment, like a departure. But in this cosmic campaign framework, the Ascension is the absolute opposite. It is not a departure. It is a coronation. It's the victory parade leading directly to the throne room. The language here in the book of Ephesians is all about royal enthronement. God seats the victorious Christ at his right hand. That's the position of ultimate authority, far above every single competing spiritual power or cosmic ruler. This is the moment the victor is officially installed as the true king of the cosmos. Okay, so the king has won the war, and he's taken his throne. What's next? Well, that brings us to the final act, reclaiming the nations. And this is the real meaning of Pentecost, which we can now see isn't just a spiritual blessing, but a global military deployment. Now, to really get Pentecost, we have to understand a key piece of Old Testament background, something called the Babel disinheritance. The idea, which comes from texts like Deuteronomy 32, is that after the rebellion at the Tower of Babel, God essentially gave up direct rule of the nations and placed them under the authority of lesser spiritual beings, who of course became corrupt and hostile. The world was, in effect, carved up into enemy-occupied territories. Okay, now look at Pentecost. It's a direct, point-by-point reversal of what happened at Babel. At Babel, one language was scrambled into many, and that scattered the nations. At Pentecost, people speaking all these different languages miraculously understand one single message, which begins to gather the nations back together. What was broken at Babel starts to be healed at Pentecost. So here's the kicker. The church, empowered by the Spirit at Pentecost, becomes the King's advancing army. Its mission? To go into all those disinherited nations, all those territories of the defeated powers, and announce that they are now under new management, reclaiming them for the one true King. So let's just step back for a second and put all these pieces together. What we end up with is not some checklist of separate doctrines, but one single, unified, absolutely epic cosmic story. Let's just run through that campaign arc one more time. The cross is the invasion of enemy territory. The descent is the victory announcement behind the lines. The resurrection is the breakout that shatters the enemy's power for good. The ascension is the coronation of the victorious king. And Pentecost? That's the deployment of his army to reclaim the world. You see, each step leads logically and powerfully right into the next. So in the end, this framework shows us that the gospel isn't just an offer of personal forgiveness. It is a world-changing announcement. It's the news bulletin that flashes across the entire cosmos, declaring that the tide of the great cosmic war has decisively, finally turned. The rightful king has won. And that leaves us with one last, pretty provocative thought. If this story is actually true, if our world isn't just abandoned territory, but a reclaimed province under a new and victorious king, what does that mean for how we live in it, right here and right now? Thanks for watching.